So first today, we're going to just talk a little bit about BrainSell for those of you who haven't gotten the overview. Just going to do that pretty quickly. Then we're going to move on to Gary, who will give us an overview of what a budget and evaluation of current processes really means. He's going to talk about some of the common challenges that companies are facing, the problem with Excel spreadsheets. He's going to give us an overview of Sage budgeting and planning, a little demo, and then after that, we're going to open up the phone lines, and everybody will be able to ask us any questions. All right, so a little bit about BrainSell. We were founded in 1994. We like to pride ourselves on being an unbiased business software and process consultant firm, where we specialize in end-to-end business software and services. And of course, we're committed to understanding what success means to you and helping you achieve it. I've been with BrainSell here for going on 9 years, and I've been working with Gary for some time now, and the rest of the folks at Sage with our existing customers, as well as trying to bring new ones on into the Sage realm. But other than ERP, BrainSell also offers CRM, marketing automation, business intelligence, and business consulting services. And so with that, I guess we can go ahead to the next slide, Sarah. And without further ado, folks, I'm going to turn it over to Gary Mayer, who is going to now jump into talking to us about how you can create more accurate budgets and forecasts with Sage budgeting and planning. Gary.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Kelly. Yeah, I'm excited to be talking about budgeting. I've been with Sage, I was just looking up the other day, I've been with Sage now for 13 years, and I've spent all of that 13 years working with our budgeting and planning product in some way, shape, or form. The exciting part about the product now is that there's some basic licenses available with our cloud products, so the 100 cloud, the 300 cloud, the C product line that we have out there. So if you're on those, you've got some basic licenses, and really the impact it can have on your budget is significant. So let's go ahead and kind of jump into this. First off, when we talk about budgeting and planning, I always like to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. And really, when you think about a budget, a lot of folks just think, hey, it's a big headache, or it's an exercise my company goes through. But budgets are actually really important to organizations, because really, when you think about it, what a budget is, a budget's really the roadmap that's being laid or set down for your organization to achieve the strategic goals within the available resources you have available to you. So it's really important when you think about it that way, which is kind of why organizations, almost every organization, goes through a process of putting together a budget. Because you have somewhere you need to be, but you have limitations of certain resources, and you have to figure out how you get from point A to point B by the end of the year within that. And so that's what your budget is, a nice strategic roadmap. Looks like I can go, there we go. So when you think about that, then think about your current process, and a lot of why we're all sitting here today. Obviously, if everybody had a perfect process, we probably wouldn't be talking too much about this, but most budgeting processes aren't perfect. In fact, most processes are very inefficient. Doing some research, the average time for budgeting and planning is 3 to 5 months, and managers during that time period can spend up to 20% of their time on budgeting and planning. So we're investing a lot of time and a lot of effort within putting these budgets together. And there's got to be a better way. Things move too quickly nowadays. 3 to 5 months means by the time you get done with your budget, the picture might have changed. Basically, what you're facing, where you're at within your process, where your thought process, things like that. So we need a better way to look at it. That's certainly not an efficient way to put a budget together. It's taking that long. Just a little more background on that. When we looked at CFO Magazine, when they did a survey, 60% of financial professionals agreed that their budgeting process takes too long, and only 17% of people were happy with the budgeting process that they had in place. So there's a big opportunity, obviously, out here for improvement, and that's really where I think automation is the key. Automating your budget process as much as you can really is going to provide the most impact on your budget possible. So why are budgets inefficient? What are the key components within our inefficient budgets? Well, we talked about the fact that it takes too long, but but even beyond that, we get done with that budget process, the numbers aren't accurate. People get to the end of the budget, they put the budget aside because they're like, well, thankfully I don't need to look at that again because these numbers don't really mean anything. Well, that's kind of a waste of all the time we put together for not putting accurate numbers in front of ourselves. The process is expensive. Obviously, if we're spending 3 to 5 months on that, we're investing a lot of money into this as well. So we have to make sure that we streamline the process as much as possible and bring that cost down if we can. It's also difficult to collaborate. I mean, if we're doing a budget process, generally we're trying to get folks involved across our organization, right? We're trying to get people to provide impact or provide input, I should say, into our budget process. And really, we need to get that input in a variety of different ways. So, either we're sending out Excel spreadsheets, we're trying to do face-to-face meetings, we're trying to do, video meetings, things like that to get all that data together. That's a difficult way to get that information. So we want a better way, a more efficient way to do that. And then we want relevance. And that feeds back to accuracy. When we get done with the budget process, people have to think that what we've created is relevant to their day-to-day job. They have numbers they can strive towards. They got numbers they can manage to, and that they got numbers that they can work within. So it's got to be a relative. We've got to have relevant numbers and a relevant creation by the time we're done with our budget process. So those are all some of the challenges everybody faces when they're putting the budget together. And think of your own budgeting and planning process. And I think it's a good exercise to think about the areas where you're challenged most in your process. I'm sure a little of all of these apply to your budget process, but what are the ones that are most impactful in your organization? Is it time? Is it a very inefficient process? Or is your budget just extremely inaccurate? Things along those lines. Because those also, once we realize, where those challenges are, tells us where we have the most, potential for impact, where the most areas we can improve upon. So, think about that process and where those, how we can do that. Most folks, when you turn to starting to automate your budget, or when you're doing your budget, you're using Excel. So you might be thinking that, yeah, we've automated a little bit, we've used Excel. Well, Excel is an awesome tool. Excel was created a long time ago, and it's certainly, I don't think even folks that started creating Excel could dream of all the things it's been used for now. But the problem is it was never created to be a budgeting tool. So it's inefficient when we use it for budgeting or to create our budgets. It's great for looking at numbers and delving into numbers and things along those lines. But for the creation of a budget, it's really not an effective tool. And some of the problems with using Excel spreadsheets is that our data is decentralized. So we've got to upload and download our data into Excel, and then we've got to do that manually, or as an upload-download process, which can take a while. In a worst-case scenario, we actually just have to physically rekey that data in from one location into our Excel spreadsheets. That can bring in inaccuracies, things along those lines, as we're typing numbers from one place to another. So this is some of the way we're adding time into this, and then there's no way to update. So if the numbers change in the middle of our process, because again, it might be taking us 3 months to do a budget, well, then we need to get updated numbers. And again, there's still no efficient way to update those numbers. We'd have to go back and redo that same inefficient process of either a brand new upload or download, or rekey in the most current numbers so that we've got that up to date. So that decentralized data within Excel really can hurt us, and really is part of what creates some of the issues within our budget. The other problem with using Excel spreadsheets for your budget is lack of control. You bring together all your information. In essence, what folks do generally, when I've worked with a lot of different people, is you've sat down, you've created your budget, you've designed that budget, you created all the Excel spreadsheets, and then you've got this really nice budget that you put together. It took you a lot of time, and then what's the first thing you do with that budget is you tear it up into little pieces and you send it out to everybody throughout your organization, right? You email out individual sheets to everybody to get you their input. And then when those sheets come back, they may or may not look the same as what you sent them out. Folks can put great thing about Excel is everybody knows it. The bad thing about Excel is everybody knows it. So when it comes, folks take a lot of liberties with things that you send them. They can change things. They can, just create a new sheet if they didn't like the sheet you sent to them. Send you other things back that really aren't what you were looking for. So that lack of control, and then once it's out, you have no idea if anybody's working on it. Once you've sent something to them, unless you're going to manually check with everybody individually and say, have you got those numbers updated? And if they tell you they did, you just kind of have to trust you that they're working on it. But you've got really no way to manage that process. The other control issues are manual consolidations. Once you get that data back, you kind of have to manually then roll all that data up into the upper level consolidated Excel spreadsheets if you wanted to look at some consolidated numbers. And little control over structure, timing, things such as that. And then finally, security. Excel sheets are not secure. They can be, sent out to other folks, can share data with folks maybe you don't want to see, different information, things along those lines. So these are the challenges we have with the current methodology that most folks use. And I would get to say most folks on the line are probably using Excel, at least in one shape or form within your budgeting process now. With Sage Budgeting and Planning, we kind of address all those different areas. And this is where you can start to, hopefully, if you compare one to the other, you'll start to see how we can improve that process. So for example, we've got an ongoing data level link to your data sources. And I'm going to show you, we connect actually to your GL database. So whether you're using, Sage 100 or Sage 300 or whatever product that you're on, we can actually link to that different data and bring that data into the budgeting process automatically. And if that data changes, you can simply refresh the data you're budgeting with. And again, you've got that information, the current accurate information within your budget process. So it saves you all that time of getting the data in. All that upfront time of getting your data there. And again, the refresh means that you can always work with the most current information within your budget process, so that when you finish your budget process, you're dealing with current accurate numbers, which will make your budget more accurate as well. And we can link to other data sources as well in that same way. I'll talk to that about a little bit, but we can, we're not just limited to GL data. We've kind of got an automated way to link to that, but we can actually link to other data sources as well. So, payroll data, for example, or other information outside of in Excel spreadsheets, if you will, or wherever you might have data housed, so we can bring that data in an automated fashion, so that we can automate all of that part. The other nice part about Sage Budgeting and Planning is we provide the ability to get input from those that participate in the process via the web. So we have two ways actually to access the product. One is the full license, which gets, is usually used for the budget team, and is what we're going to look at today. But there's also a browser-based access that kind of looks and feels like Excel. It's not Excel, and it's accessed via a browser. And that way folks can come in, they log into the actual budget plan, so you're not splitting it out and sending it out. They come into the plan, they make changes. You can look into those pages, make sure people are updating, keep track of that. And then when they're done, consolidate that data automatically up into the consolidated sheets on the higher level of your plan, so the summary data sheets, if you will. So this also makes things more secure. You've constantly got there, you can lock down who's got access to those sheets and who doesn't. You can actually control what information they can change and what they can't, things along those lines. So hopefully you can start to see just from that brief description, and we'll actually take a look at the software and you'll see some of this in action as well. But you can start to see just from that brief comparison how you're going to save time, get more accurate data just by using tools such as Sage Budgeting and Planning. The nice part about that is that we do save time. What it does is gives you more time for what you should be doing, which is analyzing your budget, managing to that budget, and then evaluating the budget at the end as to how accurate it was and how we can improve it the next time going forward. So again, just a couple of highlights of what the Sage Budgeting and Planning can do, and then we'll jump in and take a look at it, is basically we've got that ongoing data level link to your data sources. And I said we've got a tool that can link to your GL data and establish that link in less than 5 minutes. And that's really kind of nice that we've got that data link set up, but we can also link to other data sources. Any OLEDB compliant or ODBC compliant database out there, we can link to those databases and bring that information into your budget. Again, we've got, gives you more control as well. We've got that web accessibility I've talked about, so remote participants can be involved. We've got, and that you can actually manage that data that they're interacting with. We've got, the ability to control what budget participants can see and what they can change. We actually have things called status updates where when folks are done with their input, they can change the status of a sheet, which will automatically make you aware that, hey, this sheet's now been updated. It can automatically make their manager aware. So if your process is, hey, I update a sheet and my manager has to approve it, well, when I change that status to ready for approval, that might shoot an email automatically to my manager saying, Gary's updated his budget numbers. We need you to go in to approve them. And my manager will know that. They go in, once they're done, they can mark it approved. That sends an email to the budget team saying these numbers are done, approved, and ready to be locked down. The other nice tool that we have as far as automation is a revision tool. So every time you make changes, somebody can save it as a new revision. So you can check and see, what changed as somebody made input into a budget and quickly evaluate whether those changes made sense or maybe possibly there was a mistake made if numbers are way off or things along those lines. So we'll take a look at that tool as well. The other capabilities with Sage budgeting and planning that are vitally important is the ability to leverage your data more easily. And within Sage budgeting and planning, we have something called the formula engine. And that formula engine basically grabs data from wherever you have it and puts it together with other data from other locations into, basically equations to calculate your budget values. So we can create equations that bring together values from different sources and different periods of time to calculate your budget data. They're pretty powerful. They're also can be very straightforward. The things that BrainSell, other folks will help you set up initially, and then once you have them, you just kind of use them. We're actually again able to leverage your data from payroll, outside data sources, and once we have the data in the plan, you can actually then access it in other areas throughout the plan as well. So a lot of different ways to leverage your data that go far beyond what you have available today. So what are companies saying? We have this product. The product has been around for a little while. So we do have a number of very successful implementations out there. Folks that have used it have noticed that it's much easier to put their budgets together, that they can do it in a much shorter period of time. I think the last quote references that 75% time savings for one particular company. They can be, more or less than that, but certainly that organization saw significant time savings. And folks are seeing a lot more accuracy within their budgets as well. And again, hopefully just from the overview, you can see where those things can occur just by comparison to current process or some of the challenges you have now to how Sage budgeting and planning is going to address those. So I'll stop for a second, see if there's any questions before I go into the demonstration. I don't know if we had any posted that we want to address yet. If not, then I'll go ahead and jump in and show you the product, and we can address some other. I'll leave some time at the end of that to address questions at the end of that as well.
It doesn't look like we have any questions that have come in yet, but folks, if you have any, please enter them in the question box and we can address them.
Okay. And let's see. I just shared my screen. I want to see which one are you seeing budgeting and planning, or what are you seeing here?
We're seeing your web browser. The GoToWebinar is what we're seeing. Yep.
And there, how about that? Budgeting and planning there?
Perfect. There it is.
All right. Great. Well, this is Sage budgeting and planning. It's basically kind of an Outlook type of interface to, as we look at this here. So in essence, our left-hand pane here is the shortcuts pane, and these are user-defined shortcuts. Each person that uses the product this way can create shortcuts for areas they go to most often. In the middle here, we have a folders pane, and it's kind of a hierarchical tree structure that we've got here, where we've got different folders. And in essence, you can see I can have a number of different plans and such going at any one time, and I do. And then over on the right, this is kind of our working area here. And this, when we select a particular budget, is where we can see details about that budget over here in this window over on the right-hand side. And those details, again, are in a hierarchical tree structure, which make it very easy to see the dependencies within our budget. So we know that if we enter in information on the lowest level of our budget here, that information is going to consolidate and flow up into the sheet above it. That sheet's going to join with all these other sheets, flow up into the sheet above that as well. So we can get a good idea for how our budgets work from just looking at the picture of the budget. Okay, so when we come in here, again, what we do when we set up budgeting planning, when we install the product, there's basically, as I said, a very straightforward tool that we run next to your data source. So whichever Sage product you might be using, we can connect to that data source, and that happens within 5 minutes. Once we've done that and we've installed this product, then you want to create budgets. And you come in here, and it's actually very simple to create budgets within Sage Budgeting and Planning as well. We've got a tool that basically allows you to create basic budgets. And again, so once we connect to our data real easy, we can actually begin our budget process very easy as well. And so I always like to start here and show you that if we were opening this product for the very first time, you would come in here, create basic budgets. And this is basically how easy it would be to create a general budget for your organization, and then you can go and customize the budget, from there, because almost everybody wants to customize your budget. Everybody does a lot of things uniquely, but this can get you off to a nice big start. And these are the steps we go through when we create our budget. Select our basic budgets, identify the account segments we're going to use, define our basic properties, verify the section ranges, and then create the budget. And so it's pretty simple. We'll just kind of walk through, and as we go in here, you can see we have a lot of different templates available to you. And these will probably, continue to grow in terms of different templates that are available. So you can, pick the budgets that you want to create within here. And if you need more information, if you're looking at this and saying zero-based budgets by entering period amounts, what exactly is that? Well, we've got a nice description over here of what that is. And then if you still need more information, you can click on details of the resulting budget, and we'll bring you up and show you a little, fuller description along with kind of a picture of what would be created to give you a better idea of what the budget might look like when you're done creating it. So you should have a lot of good information just up front to decide, well, hey, what budgets do I want to create? So if we want to create zero-based budgets by entering period amounts, maybe you want to do something with global assumptions, you select the budgets, you can create and select multiple different budget templates to create. Once you select those, go on to the next screen, and we decide, what segments do we want to include in these budgets. So we've got our main segment that maybe we want to do, and then maybe underneath that, I want to break my budget down by department and location. And you see kind of a picture over here on the right of what we've kind of created now. You can go down more levels, and I think eventually we're going to break this out even more. But you can, once budgets are created, we can add even additional levels to go down to if you wanted to as well. Once we decide that, then we come over here. We make sure our budget's got a name. Okay, so we'll let's just call this. We'll go with budget plan 5, just so we've got it. You select the date range, the basic date we're going to base this budget off of. The nice part about this is that you'll notice once we create our budgets, everything is based off of base date. So all of our formulas, all the data that's brought in is based off of base date. So once you create a budget and then you want to move that budget forward to a new budget cycle, you don't have to go in and recreate budgets again from scratch. You won't even have to go through this process again. Basically what you'll go in and you'll do is you'll go in and you'll change your base date to the new budget year. And then all your formulas, everything will update because they're all going to be relative to this base date. And your whole budget will pick itself up and move it forward. So you basically save a new budget, open up your old budget, maybe save as, create a new budget name, change that base date, update all your formulas, equations, and boom, you've got a brand new budget that much more quickly and easily than you had before, where you had to kind of sit down with Excel each year and start from scratch. So you can go ahead and select the budget year you want to use, and then the budget code or things such as that. And then once you do that, then you go over here and you just verify the segment ranges or section ranges that you want to use. So are your account numbers for revenue 4,000 through 499? And basically, we're guessing at it in here. You know, most companies use these ranges. They use a system to kind of figure out. It seems like these are where your numbers would be for revenue. Maybe these are where your numbers for cost of goods sold. If they're not, that's okay. You just go in and change it. So you say, nope, that's not where my numbers are. They're in this range. And you can actually have multiple ranges. So if you kind of, for some reason, at a break, your revenue counts are 4,000 through 4,500. And then they're also 5,000 through 5,500. You can add just two ranges in here if that's where all your revenue accounts are. And we're going to do that by ranges, and I'll show you, because that way, if you add new account numbers later on within those ranges, they would automatically be added to any of these sheets we created. You don't have to go back and manually remember to add them. That sheet that we create knows to look within those ranges for account numbers. So as you add new account numbers to your GL, you can automatically have those same account numbers added to your budget. Once you're done with all of this, then you just strictly, you hit finish, and it goes ahead and it creates your budgets. And it's actually a very, very quick process. But these budgets are pretty sophisticated that goes through to create. So I'm trying to give you an idea here that as we've talked, we've gone maybe 5 minutes or so as we're sitting back here to create these budgets. So it's not really taking a long time for us to generate any information within our budget. We're really just, as I said, it takes less than 5 minutes to get your data connected. It takes probably less than 5 minutes to create some initial budgets within your budget environment. And again, this is actually going out, looking at those segments, account numbers within your system, and reach out and creating the budgets within our budget environment here. And literally, I think, and we'll take a look, you can see the budget that we looked at above it. We're creating hundreds of plan sheets within a budget here within this process. So we're actually generating a fairly involved budget in a fairly short period of time. Okay, we are just about done here. It should be wrapping this process up here. And we'll take you in and I'll show you the actual budgets that we create. And then I'll show you some budgets that I've played with where we've got, a lot of data in it, and we go in there. What we won't do is populate all the data throughout the budgets, because that does take a little bit of time to put all the, every single number in there. But I'll show you what these budgets look like that we've generated. So we go in here now. We've actually created our budgets. And here's our budget plans that we created. We've got two different budgets that we created. Remember, we picked two different templates. And so if I look at the first one, here's all my summary sheets. Within that, I've got all the different departments within the company. And within each department, I've got all the different locations under each department. So you can see it's a pretty involved budget that we created. I open up the sheets. You can see kind of what the budget looks like that we've got out here now. So we get actual numbers in this budget. We've got budget columns, and so on and so forth. So this particular budget. Now I can go in, if I wanted to add all the data in these sheets, all I would have to do is go in here and refresh the calculations. It would actually go in and populate all the data in these sheets. I'm not gonna do that because for time purposes, rather than us watching it just kind of generate numbers. Let's take a look at a sheet where I've already generated some numbers so that we can get a better idea of some of the other functionality within the product itself. We open up this sheet. So here's another pretty typical plan sheet within Sage Budgeting and Planning. This is an department expense type of plan sheet. You see I've got GL account numbers over here on the left-hand side, descriptions and things like that. I've got some prior actual numbers in here, and I've got some budget numbers that we've created. Notice these sections, and I'll show you. These are when I said we create these things. Here's the salary section that was created, and here's the range of account numbers that are in that section. And so, as I said before, if new account numbers are added to your GL, they would automatically be added to this sheet if they fall within that range. Well, all we'd have to do is kind of refresh the sheet, and we'd go out and find the new account numbers and add them. Kind of a neat way of setting it up. We do have lots of notation capabilities that are native within the budgets that are created. So you can put notes on a row level here. So you can put instructions or information. And once you have notes on a particular row, that row is bolded to let you know there's notes that exist there. You can put notes in a particular cell. The same thing, you could add instructions or information. Spell it correct too. And then once you add that, then you've got a little red dot in the corner, lets you know you've got notes for a particular cell. It's a lot of notation capability. All right, so let's take a look at some of the capabilities within here in terms of data. I mean, when we're talking about budgets, and we're talking about time, we're talking about accuracy, the big things are how do we get data within the budgets? And I've kind of talked about that we link to the GL data sources. But, the question is, exactly, what are the tools within Sage budgeting and planning that brings that data in? And then what can we do with that data once it gets in here to automate how we populate our budgets? Because we don't just use that data as is when it comes in a lot of time. We need to do some exercises to it. So let's take a look at, all the tools we have to deal with data within budgeting and planning. First and foremost, I should mention, you might notice that we do look a little similar to Excel. We do that on purpose to make this something that folks adopt to very quickly and easily. If it's got a similar look and feel to things you're familiar with, people throughout your organization are going to embrace this a lot more quickly. But it is not Excel. We've put all the Excel functionality in here, but we've gone way beyond that. So we've replicated Excel a little bit, but this is definitely not Excel. It's a tool that goes far beyond that. But having said that, note that we have all those tools that you've got in Excel, so you can type in a number if you want to, okay? We can copy a number across a number of fields using a fill option. We can do cell formulas to calculate values, and we have in many instances. So here, this is a total of this column, and you can see up here, here's the cell formula that we use to calculate. Okay, so we do have those same Excel tools in here, and they're good, but they're, again, they're manual, and those are all things that you probably, you've got available to you now. The real value of budgeting and planning comes from utilizing something we call a calculation engine to populate all your data. We'll take a look at this calculation engine real quick. So I open up this calculation engine. I'm going to point out there's some rows here in the upper left. And these rows correspond to the different types of columns we have in our sheet. So I have a budget row, because remember I said we have budget columns. I have a prior actual row, because I said we have prior actual columns. I have year-to-date total rows, because over on the right I have some year-to-date total columns. So what we can do is apply one calculation per column group per row in our sheet. So we can be very specific in terms of the numbers that we calculate or populate within our budget. And we have three different types of calculations we can do. First is very straightforward. It's an amount calculation. So with this, I can simply type in a dollar amount. So I'm going to put in 12,000, and I can select the columns from this column group that I want to apply that dollar amount to from this little window over here on the right-hand side. So I want to apply that $12,000 to all 12 of my budget columns. I leave all 12 selected over here. I want to budget differently for the first 3 months and the last 9 months, I can do that too. Once I select the budget columns I want to apply that dollar amount to, then I get to decide if I want to take that 12,000 and apply it individually. So do I want to put a value of 12,000 in each and every column I select? Or more powerfully, do I want to take that 12,000 I've selected and spread it out across my entire group of columns? And if I spread it out, I get to decide, do I want to spread it evenly? So in this case, I have 12,000 in 12 columns. So I'm saying, do I want to put $1,000 in each column? Or do I want to spread those dollars out via the use of ratios? And if I spread it out via the use of ratios, I can base the ratios on last year's actuals. So if I'm dealing with the dues and subscription row that I'm in now, and last year we front loaded all our dues and subscriptions in the month of January, so 50% our expenses for that happened in the month of January, well, then this will know that automatically to put 6,000 of that 12,000 that we typed in the month of January, and it will spread the other $6,000 out across the other 11 months based on the percent of dues and subscription expenses they represented last year. Really easy way to spread dollars out across the months they're most likely to be spent. And again, I can use actual budget or statistical values to create those ratios. So, if you are housing statistical values like headcount or things like that in your GL, you can use those. And I can go back up to 10 years prior if need be to grab those ratios. So if last year was kind of a weird year for our business, so we don't want to use those numbers, I can go back 2 years ago and use those numbers instead to create our ratios. So really powerful tool to automate something we do fairly often in our budget. Our second calculation method is called source net change, kind of an odd name, but it automates an even more standard methodology we might use. Here it says, why type in a number? We've already got numbers, right? So in here it says, go ahead and populate my budget columns with last year's actuals. What did we actually spend last year each month on dues and subscriptions? And then let me adjust those numbers by amount, or more commonly, a percentage. So we've been told we need to rein in some costs this year. So take what we spent last year on dues and subscriptions, and we're supposed to reduce those numbers by 10%. So bring in what we spent last year on dues and subscription and reduce them by 10% and populate our budget columns with those. And again, I can use actual budget or statistical values, and I can go back up to 10 years prior. Really great tool for populating budget values when we're using methodologies such as that. The other thing I'll mention for this is, if I adjust these by nothing, this is the quick, easy way that I can populate all of what I call our static data within our budget. So last year's actuals. You guys say, if you're doing a budget in Excel now, you have to go out and manually somehow get all that data into your Excel spreadsheet. With here, all I do is say, take my prior actual columns, populate them with last year's actuals. Boom, I'm done. And again, notice I'm not entering a year here. So as I change that base date that our whole budget is based on, it's going to change what last year is, and these numbers will update. They'll go out to our GL, they'll grab the last year's numbers, they'll populate it all for us. If nothing else, just having that tool available to populate all your prior year information in an automated fashion as your budgets exist and move forward can save you a significant amount of time right there, add to your accuracy right there. And finally, our third calculation method, and the last one we'll talk about here, and we'll only spend a couple minutes on this because I don't want to get too much in depth on this, is our formula engine. And I kind of talked about this. We can actually create mathematical equations for our data that bring together different values from different sources and different periods of time. So I open up the formula engine so we can take a look at it. Let me make this a little bigger here. Basically, I'm going to create a mathematical equation, and I have different ways I can bring values into that equation. So for example, I can bring in account values. Okay, and I can specify the time period I want to bring those account values in from. And again, I'm not adding actual dates. These are all relative to my base date, so all these things move forward with this. I can specify the company. So if you're bringing data across companies, we can do that as well. The balance type are the actual budget or statistical values, and the account or range of accounts that I want to bring the data in from. And I can even use masking and make that part of my equation as well. Once I select the values on the first line of my equation, I join it to the next line of my equation with any standard operand. I apologize, these might be small, but basically it's add, subtract, multiply, or divide. And as my equation progresses, I can use parentheses to control the order of processing if I need to. I can also bring in values in this equation via the use of constants. So I can type in a number to represent interest rate or inflation or things like that. One common use of these two data sources, I've had a lot of folks that say we don't budget off of last year's account values. We budget off an average of our last 3 years' account values. No problem. You can bring in your last 3 years' account values. We can add them together. And then we can divide by a constant of 3. And if we want, we can multiply that times 1.1. And I've just created an equation to bring in an average of my last 3 years' account values and increase them by 10%. Very cool tool. And we can also, within here, bring in values via the use of database and link server queries. So this is where I can go out to any other open source database on your system, any OLEDB compliant, ODBC compliant database such as Excel or Access, and bring in other values in these equations that you might have on your system. Again, without having to manually type them in, and by establishing a connection that's going to be able to repeatedly go out and grab those different values. And if you're familiar with it, I can actually limit those values I bring back with standard SQL queries, which gives me a whole nother level of power as well. And then finally, I can grab that, bring values in this equation from grabbing it from other locations within Sage Budgeting and Planning, which means now you can have global assumption numbers where you have a sheet where you just enter numbers you want to use throughout your plan. You say, hey, we're going to tell each division what they're going to use, for a salary increase or for this. And you put those numbers in one place, and we use this tool to pull it into all the relevant places throughout the budget. So you only have to ever change that number in one spot. So hopefully you can see the power of this formula engine. They can be very simple. One line, we grab a value from an Excel spreadsheet. They can be a number of lines. It all just depends upon the needs of your budget. The beautiful part about this is I kind of showed you how they work, but really what's going to happen is we're just going to create those formulas for you. And then you're going to have these to use over and over again throughout your budget. So once we create the initial budget, these formulas just kind of exist. If you want to create new budgets, you can reuse them. If you need to change the formulas, you can change them. And then wherever we've used them, they're now changed and updated. So it's great. It's not something you're going to be in changing formulas constantly or creating new formulas constantly. Generally, what happens is initially you work with everyone and we get your budgets created and your formulas created, and now you have them out there and available to you. So that's really the biggest piece of the power behind the product is our ability to bring in the different data. The other way we get data in here is we roll it up. So we've got the ability to consolidate data. So some of these numbers, this number, and actually I can hide different things, and I'm going to bring something forward called flow. The column here called flow. These numbers, these salary numbers, these actually are rolled up from the sheet below this. So they're just totals from the compensation sheet. So that's the final way we can get data within a sheet is we consolidate that data up from sheets below it. And we set this to let it know that you're going to grab this data from this particular sheet below. So hopefully you can start to see the power in here and how we can automate all that data population within your budget, which is really the bulk of the time and really going to add the most significance to the accuracy of your budget as well. Let's take a look at a couple other just quick tools. If we look over here, there's a little main tab. I've been in this plan sheet tab, but there's a little tab over here called main. On the main tab, we have a couple of other tools that are kind of neat. One is status code. I've talked about that earlier. These are user defined. You create those, and these are codes that allow us the budget team to know if the budget process is moving along. So again, they might start a budget with a status of beginning planning. As I come in and I update this, I might change this status to complete. And these status codes are tied to emails and other things. So when I change this budget to complete, not only can the budget team see it, the status of each and every sheet within the budget at any one time, that can also be set to automatically shoot an email off to my boss saying, hey, Gary's completed this budget sheet and it now is ready for your approval. And then my boss can come in and look at it. When they're done, they can hit approve, and that can shoot an email off to the budget team saying this budget's now been approved. You can have one here that says, not approved, and that can shoot an email back to me saying you need to change something. So status codes can be very essential to a proactive budget process and managing that budget process. We also have revision codes. And as I said, each time you make changes to a budget, you can save it as a new revision. And there's an unlimited number of revisions. This is very handy for making sure folks have actually made changes or seeing what people have changed or just kind of tracking where your budgets come in the process. So if I look in here and I change this to revision, once I create a new revision, I immediately have the option to compare it to any other revision I've had out here. So if I go up here, there's a revision comparison tool. It shows me all the other revisions I have. I only have one, which is the original revision we started with. But if I had a whole bunch, I'd see a whole list and I can pick which one I want to compare to. So let's compare this current revision to the revision we started with. So they hit OK. You're going to see up top here says revision 2 to revision no name, because the original one didn't have a name. But as I come into the new sheet now, it highlights for me in yellow everything that changed from one revision to the other. So I immediately know without having to search for what happened. If you remember, I manually typed in that number 12 when I said I could manually type in data. It changed some total numbers, which are highlighted for me in yellow as well, because they changed. If I don't remember what the number was beforehand, that's not a problem. I just hover my mouse over and it shows me it was 0 and I changed it to 12. So again, a great way to really see what's changed with the budget, make sure changes make sense, and again, just to have a proactive management of that budget process to enhance accuracy and things along those lines. At any time, if I don't like a revision, we can go back and pick a previous revision and make that the active revision to use going forward instead. So if these changes weren't acceptable, we could go back and say, you know what, instead of revision 2, use revision 1 and go forward and use that going forward. This is also the base date. We talked about that. So this shows you what the base date is. And again, that could change and everything rolls forward. We do also have full security. So when we set up individual users that have access, we have all sorts of capability to define, what capabilities these users are going to be given. But also when we come into an individual sheet, we get to decide who has access to that sheet. So we can come in and say, Alan has no access to this particular sheet. Bill is a reviewer, so Bill can look but not touch. We made Bob a sheet manager, so Bob actually can assign some of these things to this particular sheet. And then maybe Denise, we've made her a planner, so Denise can actually come in here and change data within the sheet. But again, we can control down to a cell level what Denise can and cannot change. So we can make sure Denise is still only changing what we want her to change. So very nice full-featured security within the product itself. All right, the last thing I want to show you, where we pause for some questions and such, is just a little bit of a different sheet so you can just see how we deal with other data. And so if I open up this particular sheet, you can see this is payroll data. And in this particular sheet, we've actually linked, let me open up here, view options. I've actually linked to payroll software. So we're not getting this information from our letter, we're actually getting this from payroll software, whether that be a Sage payroll product or third-party payroll solution, things such as that. And you can see that we can treat this just like GL data. I created a section where I said bring in all the employees that exist in this department and this location. And again, if I add new employees in that data source, I can have them updated here automatically. And it brought in all this information along with it. What's their current anniversary date, what's their salary, what's the min-max for their range, things like that. So you can see we're dealing with different salary data. Here's a sheet we can set up to just kind of calculate for that. This particular sheet, this company has contract employees, so they wanted to have termination dates when the contracts ended, so that after that particular date, they don't have a salary burden if those employees will no longer be there, things along those lines. So we can even design sheets to accommodate for people that aren't here yet. Are we going to have new hires this year? What are they going to be? What positions? How much is the salary going to be? And when do we want to start that salary burden? You can see down here, you grab global assumptions from a sheet up above where somebody set this data to pull this information into the sheet. So you can see how we use that global assumption data as well. All right, well, hopefully that gives you a great idea of how Sage budgeting and planning can help your budgets. automate your budgets and make them more accurate. I do want to stop here and see, do we have any questions that I'm able to address?
Thanks, Gary. That was great. Sarah, do you see any questions that have come through?
Let's see here. I'm looking. One question that did come up, is there a cost associated with the Sage budgeting and planning?
There is not. If you're on Sage 100, Sage 100C or Sage 100 Cloud or Sage 300C or Sage 300 Cloud, you get a one base license and a couple of the WebView licenses as part of your subscription. And then if you need additional licenses, there would be a cost. And there might be a cost just to be upfront too, to help you set up. You might need a little bit of assistance getting some things set up and getting your budget going. So you might need a little bit of assistance on that. But the initial couple licenses you do have access to as long as you're on those products.
Great.
Thanks, Gary. And just to add to that as well, folks, you know, we've had a good number of customers that have already implemented Sage budgeting and planning, both on the perpetual Sage 100 or 300 and in the Sage 100 and 300 cloud. And I can tell you from their experience that the implementation process has been very easy. You know, we've not encountered any weird or otherwise issues so far, and it's really been a smooth process from start to finish. We have a team that we work with that can help with the implementation side of things. And just to reiterate one other thing as well, Gary, this is a cloud-based add-on. So this is accessible from anywhere at any time through a mobile device, iPad, phone, etc. Correct?
Well, the web licenses are. The base license goes on your system, and the WebView license is browser-based. So as long as you can get to a browser from a device, then you can actually then access this product from that.
That's great.
All right, and we do have another question. This one is from Jim, and he is asking, how does the system handle differing department codes in separate data sources?
Probably would need a little more information on that. So you're saying you have one company with different department codes and separate data sources? Because that would be a bit unusual. Or if you have multiple companies and each company has a different product code or things like that for a same device, then you kind of, there are ways to deal with that at that point in time. You can make conversion tables. There's a variety of different ways we can deal with that. It certainly makes things a little less smooth. Obviously, it's better if things are all the same, so we can just pull in that device, but that those numbers in one unit. But if they are different, it's just a matter of them of how do we join them together? You know, how do we let the system know that they're the same? And you know, the worst case scenario, we build a kind of a conversion table, and the system accesses that table. But there's a variety of ways to deal with that.
Okay, and Jim, I did unmute your mic, but he did clarify, Gary, things like pulling payroll data from a third-party payroll provider.
Sure, and the payroll data, we can do that and pull that from the payroll provider. And generally, in most case scenarios, what we're doing is those are being assigned, you know, the department number or something, we're linking those to a particular department. So when they roll up, so we'll have a sub-level sheet that just is all the payroll data, kind of like the sheet I was showing you. And then the totals from that sheet are going to roll up to a department level sheet above it. And we can connect it then to that particular department number or things such as that, you know, either A, can match what comes out of your payroll data, or B, we can tell the system we're going to roll up to that spot anyway.
Great. So that looks like all the questions we have from today's session. So thank you, Gary and Kelly, both for providing this information to us today. And thank you, everyone, for joining. If you have immediate questions, you can reach out to Kelly via her email or phone, and we will again be following up with the recording. We'll send that all over to you. So I hope everyone has a great day and a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Gary and Sarah.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.